The Lurking Weave, a tale of the Jorōgumo. The villagers of Tsukimura whispered the tale only in hushed tones, their voices trembling as they spoke of the Yoru no Higawa, the night silk. Travelers who ventured too close to the mountain pass never returned. Some said they had been lured by a mesmerizing woman with eyes like liquid gold, while others spoke of silken threads drifting in the wind, clutching at skin like ghostly fingers. For centuries, the disappearances had been treated as misfortune, blamed on wild animals, bandits, or the missteps of the reckless. But beneath the surface, beneath the polite nods and careful words, an unspoken truth festered. Something inhuman prowled in the misty woods, watching, waiting. And on the first night of autumn, under a harvest moon, so red it looked like a bleeding wound in the sky, another soul would be claimed. The drifter's path. Kenjiro Ishikawa was a man without a home, a ronin whose sword had long lost its purpose. He had once been an esteemed samurai in service of the Yamashita clan, but betrayal and war had stripped him of everything, his lord, his honor, even his name. All that remained was the steel at his hip and the hunger in his belly. When he stumbled upon Tsukimura, he expected nothing more than a night's shelter and perhaps a warm meal in exchange for guarding the rice fields or cutting wood. But the moment he stepped past the torii gate that marked the village entrance, he felt it. A presence, unseen but suffocating, like a spider, sitting at the center of an enormous web. The villagers avoided his gaze, their faces lined with exhaustion and something far worse, dread. At the inn, an elderly woman named Madame Haru served him sake with a shaking hand. "You should not have come," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the hearth. Kenjiro raised an eyebrow. "I only seek a place to rest. Nothing more." Her fingers clenched around the wooden tray. "Then leave before nightfall." But Kenjiro was a man of no superstition. He had seen the horrors of war, the disemboweled corpses left for crows, the villages burned to embers, the weeping of the dying. Ghost stories and whispers of monsters did not sway him. He merely laughed and took a sip of his drink. "You fear something," he said plainly. Haru's face darkened. The flames flickered low, casting shadows across the walls like tangled webs. "Do you know the tale of the Yoru no Higawa?" she asked. Kenjiro shook his head. Haru exhaled shakily. "She comes when the night air is thick with the scent of wisteria, when the moon is red as a fresh wound, a woman more beautiful than any mortal, dressed in silks that shimmer like gold. She calls out to men, beckoning them with her voice, sweet as honey." She leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. "But she is no woman, she is a Jorōgumo, a spider demon that weaves her silken lies, ensnaring men in her web, and when she is done playing with them, she feeds." Kenjiro chuckled. "A folk tale meant to frighten fools." Haru did not smile. "You should leave before she finds you." He did not. The woman in gold. The night air was thick with the scent of wisteria. It curled through the village like an unseen mist, clinging to the skin, to the breath. Kenjiro felt it in his lungs, deep and sweet, almost intoxicating. The streets were empty. Even the lanterns had been extinguished, leaving only the silver glow of the harvest moon to illuminate the dirt road leading to the mountain pass. Then he heard it, a voice, soft as silk, smooth as flowing water. "Samurai-sama." Kenjiro's breath caught. She stood at the edge of the road, where the trees swallowed the light. A woman in a golden kimono, embroidered with intricate patterns of spiders. Her hair was dark as the abyss, flowing like ink over porcelain skin. Her eyes, golden, too bright, too deep, fixed upon him with something almost hungry. She smiled. "You look lost, traveler." Kenjiro, despite himself, felt drawn to her. The way her lips curved, the way the wind seemed to whisper around her, the way her very presence commanded the night. "A drink," she offered, holding out a porcelain flask. The sake inside was dark, richer than blood. He hesitated. A warning bell rang in his mind, the old woman's words still fresh. But he was no coward. He had fought men twice his size, had slain enemies in droves. What harm could one woman pose? He took a sip. The world blurred. The web of no return. When Kenjiro woke, he was no longer on the village road. He was inside a cavern. Above him, hundreds of glistening white strands stretched across the ceiling like a living thing, pulsing faintly. The air was thick with decay, the stench of rot and old death. And then he saw them, the bodies. Men, wrapped in silk like grotesque chrysalises, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Some were fresh, their eyes still wide in horror. Others were mere husks, their flesh hollowed out, skin clinging to bones like paper stretched too thin. And then, movement, a shadow descending from above. Kenjiro's blood ran cold. The woman was no longer a woman. She hung from the ceiling, her body grotesquely twisted, her golden kimono fusing with the monstrous black limbs that emerged from her back. Her face was split in a rictus grin, her jaw distending as needle-like fangs dripped with venom. A Jorōgumo. "You taste of steel and arrogance," she purred, descending slowly. "I do so love a challenge." Kenjiro reached for his sword, too late. The silk shot forward, coiling around his wrist, his ankles, his throat. It burned as it tightened, a constricting vice. He gasped, but the air was thick with poison, his vision swimming. The last thing he saw was golden eyes, bright with malice. The last thing he felt was the fangs sinking into his flesh. And the last thing he heard was the sound of spiders weaving a new cocoon.